it going, Derek? I'm going to move this over and share my screen. You have anything in particular you want to cover yourself today, Derek? All right, I'll share my screen.
How are you doing today, Cameron?
Quick, sorry. Okay, so I got this design emailed. Question was how to get it filled. So I think I'll just go over this one real quick, and then we'll go from there.
Can you hear me?
So we look at this, and this is the first time I've looked at it, so I'm not quite sure what's wrong, but let's just take a look. All right, it looks like all these pieces here are individual segments, at least on the outside. The inside's okay. That's all one piece, but these are broken up into individual pieces. So what we would need to do in order to get this to get fixed is connect where these are broken. And if we hold shift and select more than one, we'll see we've got two objects here. We can grab the shape tool. In order for the shape tool to be able to combine these two together or join those nodes, you actually have to combine the objects first. And then when you grab the shape tool, you'll see two ending nodes. You can grab both of them and hit join. So that's one way of going about it. But I find if you've got pieces that are overlapping or pretty close to each other, what I would likely do is if you take the virtual segment delete and hold shift, while holding shift with virtual segment delete, it's supposed to change. The icon didn't change for some reason. Okay, now it's changing. So if I hold shift, you'll see the icon change. And if I drag a box around this whole thing and then let go, what that'll do is it'll close up anywhere that there is overlapping lines. But let's see what we got going on over here. Okay. If we notice, this piece here is overlapping that piece there. And so it's not going to know how to close that. Virtual segment delete won't, because it's trying to close where the nodes are touching as opposed to finding that hole and coming way back, because there's not a gap tolerance with the virtual segment delete tool. So let's try it again, holding shift. Why it's not changing my icon. Try it again. Okay, so now let's select this. I just moved things around just to see if they move together, and then I undo to see that. It looks like it's working correctly, so I'm just going to hold, or I'm going to select everything and hit fill grayscale. Still not working. Okay, so what that means to me is there's still gaps somewhere, and what we could do is we could use join curves to join them together as well. If we grab these, and let's just do a gap tolerance of something small like 0.01 inches and hit apply. Okay. And now it looks like it filled stuff in. So let's go ahead and try fill grayscale again. It looks like it did just fine. But I wonder what was wrong before. So if I'm going to back up to before we joined curves, and what I'll do is I'll select our piece and hit find open shapes. And what that's going to do is it's going to give a red outline to anything that's open. And then where it's open, it's going to give us these different end nodes. So if we look at this, this is why it didn't close up with virtual segment delete, is because this line is slightly longer than that. It's not exactly on top of this node. So had this node been moved over, then virtual segment delete would have closed that one in. And we'll do the same thing over here to see if it's the same problem or not. And I'm zooming way in. I mean, this is 5,000% zoomed in, right? So if we bring this node down to there, we can either move it back or just virtual segment delete and it'll go back to where it intersects. So that's fine there. So this is what would happen if you go back, if you go through and try to fix these manually. Showing an open piece right there. Teeny tiny piece. I don't know where that came from, but we don't need that. We're going to get rid of it. Looks like the same thing happened over here. An overlapping line that we don't need. So it's good to get this cleaned up. Actually, if we were to just use join curves, it would have left those pieces or it would have connected them to something else. So it is good to clean this up as much as we can. Keyboard's not working very well. Not sure why. So I'm gonna move my thing there and see if I can get it to work better. Okay, so same thing on this one, just slightly overlapping. If we virtual segment delete, it should delete back to that intersection. That looks to be about it. So now if we join curves again, and fill grayscale again, now it's going to work. And that's without having used join curves. That's just with virtual segment delete and joining the nodes that way. Then we've got this heart here. Not sure what's going on with that one. Let's take a look. I actually changed the names on this design. So this would be a J instead of a C. So with Monument Lettering Center fonts, these MLC fonts, if you don't capitalize, you'll end up with a small version of the font. So it was a lowercase j and a lowercase j. They're slightly smaller than the uppercase. If I were to do an uppercase right next to it, you'd see the difference. So I'll go ahead and stick to the lowercase j just to match what they had. But okay, so I'm not sure why these aren't filled, but we will go ahead and take these and go and fill grayscale on them as well. It might be that he's not, if he's just going to do them gold up in the corner, might not be doing an outline. In which case, what I would do instead of outlining is I would just combine them like this, and then you could fill. The thing with gold fills, or if we're looking at the fills over here, okay, because all of this is black for our deep lines, and this one over here, let's we're going to grab those, everything but the lettering, and combine it together. Okay, so that's all black. Because it's black, it's going to get filled by this fill color here. So if we wanted it to be a different color, then what we would really want to do is fill these in with white instead. And maybe do the same thing for coach here. So we will fill this all in with white. The reason we're doing that is because anything that's 100% white is going to then map to the second stain. So if I right click on this and change that to gold leaf, and then when I fill this stone in, all those white pieces will turn into gold leaf and all the stuff that's black will stay black. You can't, if we go back to the grayscales, you can't have these black and then just try to fill them in with gold leaf. If I were to click on this gold leaf here, okay, it'll fill that in with gold leaf because that's what it's telling it to do. But when you go and fill the whole design, all of this black is going to turn to gold leaf or not even work at all. I'm not sure why it's not working, but I'll have to look at that. So it's not going to work the way that we expect it if we let's see here. Let's go back to grays. So you'll see that this is turning to black now because I changed this to black. But if I were to change it to gold leaf again, all of that stuff ends up going to gold leaf. So the way that the stains work is you've got two choices, either stain 1 or stain 2. And when it comes to the gray scales, you need to actually turn these to white or black in order to achieve that. So this first one here, everything that's 100% black will turn to stain 1. Everything that's 100% white will change into stain 2. So in order to make that work, you need to fill these in with the correct colors in the grayscales first, and then when you fill it in, they'll fill in that way. You can individually click on these and fill them, which just takes longer. You can do it, but to not mess with the black of all the rest of the design, you would want to do it from white instead of black. So hopefully that makes sense. So to fix this one, that's what I would do is just go in and make sure that all those little pieces were deleted, and then join all those open curves. If we grab this again and run find open shapes, it's not, oh, I guess it did. It still turned it red. So let's see what happened. There's something down in here. Teeny tiny pieces. So we'll get rid of this piece. And there's another one over here. Teeny tiny piece. Get rid of that piece. So I guess it's good to check that stuff every once in a while. If we go back to fill grayscale, let's go back to our grays. Now, you'll notice that that just kind of messed this up like this, turned black. Let's see what happens if I hit to grayscale. Okay, so to grayscale messed that up. So we're going to try this again. What's happened there is that it's remembering where it got combined, or somehow, it inherited that color of the black. So we're going to tell it to forget fills. That way it forgets that it ever had a fill applied to it, a granite fill applied to it. And now we will rerun these and go back to grayscale and see if it works, which it did. So that's good. And if we grab this and go find open shapes again, nothing turns red, which means that there aren't any open shapes. So that's good. If there were open shapes, it would still change the color. So it looks like we've got this one fixed. Sometimes people like to make these rings show through to the polish. Maybe, a portion of the ring. So you can, if you want, knock out like this. Just make sure that you end your knockout with hitting escape on the keyboard. And this is just so you know a bug in 2021. As I'm zooming, you'll see it's flashing between the grayscale and what it was colored with before. So it'll flash the granite color that it had before. And that's just an on-screen defect. They changed the rendering engine with 2021. And so they're trying to make it work better or faster, but sometimes with granite fills, it's a little bit wonky. So hopefully they can get that fixed up. But anyway, that is what I would do to change that. And then you can just go ahead and save over. It's read-only because I came from the internet. So we'll just put it under desktop and save it. Yes, we'll convert those. And everything looks to be pretty good. Except that when it restored the fill, it turned these to white instead of stained too. So I will have to check into that too and see what's going on. That's probably a bug on our end we need to fix. So, okay. Anyway, that's what I would do to fix that one. Let me open up another one here. So because of the crazy stencil crisis, lack of stencil, this, in order to get this to fit on a 24-inch piece of stencil, he cut it in half, trimmed it right here, which leaves him with this portion. Okay, so his question was, how would you take this one and put it up against this and not get a double cut along this line? And so there's two things that you can do. You can either delete the big line, right? Or you can delete the little line. Obviously, deleting the big line is going to make it so that you can't see this. So that's not going to work. So what we'll do is we'll grab this using the shape tool. Simply click on that left-hand line of the rectangle. It'll give us a black dot. We can click anywhere. It doesn't matter where. But if you click anywhere, that's selecting the segment. So a segment is the line between two nodes. So if I clicked here or here or here, you'd see the black segment selection piece there. So if I click on that and hit delete on the keyboard, it's going to delete it. So if we move it away, you'll now see that there's that line missing. Okay. And so now when he cuts this, he's not going to get a double cut there. And then it'll still cut this line all the way down. So it'll still be able to be separated with the stencil, and then he'll just rotate it and piece it back together with this one. But that's what I would do if I were trying to delete that. Now, technically, if this were mine, I probably wouldn't have trimmed it right where it is, just because this D is getting cut off. So I might, you're trying to conserve stencil, and this is 30 inches long. And so maybe if you've only got that much stencil, then it, that would matter. But I would try to probably come over a little further, which would end up pushing this a little further that way. But anyway, that's what I would do in order to get rid of that, is simply click on that line and delete it. So that's so Derek's asking if it's easier to cut it down the middle. You can cut it down the middle. But again, I think his thing is he's trying to maximize stencil usage. And so he's trying to get 24 inches in width this way, because that's, if we were to lay down a rectangle showing a stencil, his stencil is 24 inches, or probably 25-inch stencil with 24 inches of cutability. So if this is his stencil, he's probably trying to maximize, the usage of this, plus not use as much lengthwise. And so that's, I would assume, why he's cutting it where he is. Again, I would probably just, if it were me, it's just a little bit, difference there. If we're going from, that's not even an inch difference. So I would probably just cut it right there, so that this is easier to piece together, or bring it down to here so that I'm not cutting into a letter at all. But then that gives you a little bit of a gap, 2 inches of wasted stencil, which, I mean, if you brought it even further down to there, something like that, that would give you a piece of stencil, 4.5 inches of stencil there, which I would go ahead and just use that to do a death date with. But that then gives, the problem though is if you do that, then this is going now 4.5 inches further this way. This one would be going 4.5 inches this way more, right? So then you end up with all of this wasted space here as well. So if you can piece it together, that's great. As long as it lasts well, it's kind of crazy, the world that we're living in, that we got to worry about stuff like that, but that's how it goes. All right, so there's the answer to that question. I hope that solves that. I was really hoping Analia would be able to jump in today so we could go over what she was doing last time, but it doesn't look like she's here today either, so we'll have to try again next week. I'm just going to check my emails really quick to make sure there wasn't anything else. I think that's it. All right, so those are the technical support, or how to do these kind of steps, questions for that. We got a little bit of time. I think I'll only go 30 minutes today, Derek, if that's cool with you. So we got about 5 minutes here.
Yeah, I didn't really have anything to bring to the table today.
Talk about I thought I'd just show you really quick what's new in Coreldraw 2021.5. 2021.5 just released at the end of September. And so it's, if you look up here, it says 2021.5. And what they did is they changed the way that they're doing things again. And this version is only available to subscribers. So if you have a subscription, or if you have the upgrade protection program, which they have now done away with. So it used to be that you could purchase Coreldraw perpetually and then upgrade for $199, to the next version, or 2 or 3 versions later. They got rid of that. They switched over to the upgrade plans, and they've renamed them a few times. But just recently, again, at the end of September, they got rid of the upgrade protection program as well. So you can no longer get upgrades to your perpetual licenses. So subscription only for this update. But what they've added is in Font Manager. Let's go ahead and Open up Font Manager here. One of the things that they added was that Font Manager now has access to Google's library of fonts. So if I bring Font Manager over here, there's now an online section, and the Coreldraw fonts, these are the ones that come with Coreldraw, and then Google fonts. And interesting, oh, I was filtering by variable. That's why there are no variable fonts available with Corel standard fonts, and Google has 1,350 of them. If I uncheck that, I've actually got 4,718 Google fonts and 986 Corel fonts. So these ones are all available now. That's a good chunk of fonts. But one of the nice things is that there are so many variable fonts available with Google. And you'll notice over here, it's got the O for open typed, but then it also says VAR for variable. So this Allegreo one, for instance, let's see if we can find one that's pretty nice that I don't have. So I don't have this ASAP installed. That's why it's white over here, because it's an online font. It says install or download to use. So if I download it, it's going to download it to my computer and then turn it yellow. What the yellow means is that I can actually use it now inside Coreldraw, but I can't use it in other programs like Word or whatever. If I were to right click and say install instead, then it would be available to all the programs on my machine that are able to use those open type fonts. But it should now be available right inside Coreldraw. So if I were to come in here and start a new document, I can change this now to ASAP. There's my ASAP font. You'll see how it sizes differently than my MD Roman, and that's because, again, this is not a font that I created, and I didn't tell it to be sized off of a capital letter. So it's actually measuring the 1 inch off of including ascenders and descenders in the font. So if I wanted to size this the same as my other stuff, that's when I'd use the monument text Docker, so that I can say, hey, and because I've never used this font, I don't know what a good letter is. It looks like T is probably pretty good. If I were to change this to an H, we can look at these and say that they're both about the same height, right? This lowercase h comes up higher, and the A and the S, of course, come up higher. If we were to drop a guideline, you can see how those come up higher than the rest of, I guess those don't come up higher, just the H. So anyway, what I would do is I would choose a letter. H is usually what I have anyway. I want it to go to 1 inch. I'll just hit apply, and that will resize it so that it is now the same size as this over here. But what I really wanted to show you was variable fonts, what you can do with variables. And it depends on the font, of course. But with this particular font, let's see what's available. Right next to our font dropdown is now this, and it's giving us a variable weight. So we can slide this and it will thicken it up. If we go to the wireframe, check that out. This is automatically changing the weight of that font. We can go thin, we can go thick, and it's all still editable as text. And it's like sandblastable without even doing anything. So if we change this to was, so if I wanted to use this font for something small, like an epitaph, or even the text altogether, if I had a stone where I wanted to use this font for everything, let's say we made the family name bigger. Okay, so the family name, we're going to do it like, I don't know, this big. And these we're going to do maybe this big. Okay. If we wanted this to be more consistent, we could change the weight on this one to be a little bit thinner. And we could change the weight on this one to be a little bit thicker. So that way the darkness of our fonts matches up a bit better. That's just cool. Variable fonts are awesome. Now there are no, that I'm aware of, monument specific variable fonts. It is something that we'd like to build someday. But how neat is that you can do that? There are other variables that a font producer can create. So different ones have different abilities. If I change this to script, you'll notice that there's also a width. So it can make it more condensed. And you'll notice, let's look at this letter A. As I shrink that down, it's curving that, just like the letter S is doing the same thing. It's curving that a bit more in order to make it look right. Okay. And in order to achieve that, if we go to the wireframe on this one, you'll notice how the A, and you'll see all those different pieces, they are actually just overlapping objects. So as we bring this in, those pieces overlap, right? But if we were to use a font like this and want it to be blastable, then what we'd end up having to do is just weld the pieces together. As soon as you weld it, it's not editable as text anymore. But as soon as I weld it, and it takes 2 welds, you'd weld it once and then you weld it again, and then it will get rid of those overlaps for you. So again, to make it sandblastable is not really that hard, but it's super powerful that you now got the ability to thicken stuff up or change your, those different variables there, which is pretty neat. So anyway, I think we'll end there for today. We will see you next week at the same time.